Hey there, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show, where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to and learn from everyday entrepreneurs.
Hi, this is Heidi Anderson with ECI Business Financial Strategies and my co-host, Jeff Heggie. And we are really excited to bring today our wonderful guest, Shereese Alexander. And I met Shereese. You guys will absolutely love her. I met her through the JV Challenge, and we've had a couple of guests on from there. One was Connie Whitman, and then so Connie and I connected, and then Shereese and I had kind of talked on the platform, and then Connie's like, "Oh, you got to have Shereese on the show," once, And so then I had a conversation with Shereese, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, very compelling story, very exciting, evolution that I think people will get a lot from hearing." So, without further ado, here is Shereese.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here and have a fun conversation with you today.
We're really looking forward to having you on with us, Shereese. Heidi, do you want to read her bio, or you want me to? It's intriguing.
Well, do we want to read her bio, or Shereese, do you want to just tell us your bio, like your life story?
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. We've read your bio, and it's very intriguing. It's better coming straight from you, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a business networking coach, and I help entrepreneurs to connect better with their potential mentors, clients, partners, and influencers. So basically, I teach those advanced social skills to help you take your business to the next level. But it wasn't always this way. Back in high school, I was super awkward, as I think a lot of high schoolers can relate to. It's just a rough, weird, strange time of life for a lot of people, and I was no exception. When I got to college, my best friend signed me up for this club fair, where we had to sit out on the quad and pass out flyers and talk about our clubs. And she's a total social butterfly, so she was loving it. She was floating around, passing out these flyers, just as happy as she could be. But I'm a total introvert, and so I was so angry with her. I was like, "Why would you do this to me? I don't like people, and I don't like crowds. And now there's crowds of people, and I have to talk to these people." So I just stood behind the booth with my arms crossed, looking really upset, and I wouldn't talk to anyone unless they walked up to me, and then I would just pass them a flyer and say nothing. And it was just really weird. But then I noticed this guy sitting next to me, a friend of mine named Mike. I'll never forget. And someone would walk up and he would be like, "Hey, my name's Mike. How's it going? What's your major?" And they would have this little conversation, and the person would take a flyer and kind of walk away. And I was like, "Huh, that's interesting. Let me see what happens if I do that." So the next person walked up and I'm like, "Hey, I'm Shereese. How's it going? What's your major?" I said it exactly the way he said it. I did it the way he did it. I shook my hand the way he shook his hand. I furrowed my brow the way he furrowed his brow. I literally just copied him. And guess what? I got the same results that he got, the exact same results. And at that moment, I was like, wait a minute. Social skills are a skill? Are you kidding me? All this time, I just thought you were born with it or you weren't. And I'm a scientist. I've been a scientist forever. So I was like, as a scientist, I don't really have to know people or have people skills or get, I don't have to even do any of that. So little did I know that this is something you could learn, like riding a bike or speaking Spanish or any of those things. So that kind of set me on this 15-year journey to understand human dynamics and just communication and how it works. And so that's kind of the beginning part of why I'm so obsessed with effective communication, because I saw the power of it to connect people, to create movements, to create friendships, to all kinds of amazing things. So fast forward a little bit, now I'm in graduate school and my social skills are markedly better. And I'm in graduate school trying to make my mark on the world. My goal since I was a little girl, since I was 10 years old, was to win the Nobel Prize and find a cure for a horrible virus that was affecting the world. And once I got into grad school, I realized that the information that I was uncovering was kind of like a brick in a cathedral. So that one brick, you don't know if it's going to be your first brick or your last brick or something in the middle, but that's kind of what all of scientific knowledge is. And I just felt like, wow, this impact of my work might not be seen for 150 years until after I die, or never, because it's just one brick in this big, creation. And so I was like, I want more of an impact on the world than what I'm having now. And so I left graduate school. Unfortunately, that was
Where were you at graduate school?
I went to NYU.
Okay.
I went to NYU Medical Center. And unfortunately, that was 2008, which was the worst time to quote unquote find myself, as my mother says it. And I found myself not able to get a job at McDonald's or Starbucks or anywhere. And so I ended up getting evicted, being homeless, sleeping in a truck in the middle of a blizzard in Brooklyn, and just saying, what has happened to my life? I ended up going into a homeless shelter at my mom's suggestion, because I had actually just gotten a job as a professor, and that job was going to start on a Tuesday, and I lost my living arrangement on like a Sunday, and I was like sitting on a street corner, boohoo crying, like ugly snot crying, and I'm not a crier, by the way, and I certainly do not cry in public. And I was sitting on a New York City street corner on my one piece of luggage, my one like thing that I owned in the world, just boohoo crying, snot and everything. And I called my mom, and I was just like, I'm such a loser. I've ruined my life. Like, how did I get here? And all this stuff. And I was like, I don't even know, like, I just need to come home. Cause I'm from California. I'm a California girl. My whole family's here and in Oregon, and there's no one in New York, no one. So, which was the appeal in the beginning, but then turned out to not be so fun. So my mom was just like, look, you have this opportunity to become a professor. It's going to start in a couple days. And I honestly believe that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that if you don't take advantage of this, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And I sat there for a minute, and I was just kind of like, sniveling on the phone. And my mom was just like, you know what, never mind, just come home. Just come home. Forget what I said, because she was thinking like total mom fail, my reaction was silence. But no, I was just really chewing on what she said. And I was like, you know what, you're right. I will stay. I will stay because I will regret this. And she was totally right. So I went into a homeless shelter, and I would love to say that, then everything turned right around and life was great. But that experience lasted for 18 months, me bouncing from shelter to shelter before I got back on my feet, while also teaching my college classes in the day, going back to the shelter at night. It was really, really hard. But one of the things that time taught me was that as much as I was proud of what I had accomplished in life, my, degrees and whatever, I thought about like what life would be like on my deathbed. And would I look around and really say, man, I wish I had just one more degree on the walls? No, I wouldn't say that. I would want there to be just like hordes of people around my bed, all crying and super sad because I actually had some kind of impact on their life. I did something to move them, to inspire them, to, I don't know, just love them well on this earth. And I thought that's what I want. So while accomplishments are so powerful, there's nothing more valuable than connection. And that's why I do what I do now. I love connection. I love helping connect people. I'm a super connector. And yeah, the end.
And so basically you spent a lot of like your earlier years learning what you didn't want. And that made what you really did want shine out even more powerfully. And you were able to direct your focus on it, because it's so hard to see you now and imagine you not being this bubbly on top of the world person.
Let me tell you, nobody in my world would have described me as bubbly. Nobody.
You're delightful, and the transformation that's what the story is so compelling, just so anybody who can hear this story and go, wow, if I can go from where I am to that, and it is possible.
Mm-hmm. And it's more fun.
Yeah.
What you've said there, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I actually posted a quote on Instagram the other day, is by D. Todd Christofferson, that says, many things are good, many things are important, but only a few are essential. And, that to my feelings is that's kind of what you were at, is, you're in an Ivy League school, you're getting some really cool things in your life, but through this whole experience, you kind of found out what is really important. Yeah. So that's a very cool story. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. And that quote's amazing. I could not agree with it more. There are so many things that are important and are good, but not everything's like equally valuable at the end of the day. And relationships are one of those assets, one of those things that is just, it's not tangible, but it's so meaningful and it's so satisfying. Probably one of the sources of the greatest pain and one of the sources of the greatest pleasure are the people in our lives, like bar none, I think.
So if somebody comes to you as a coach, what do you teach them? What are your, I guess, your pillars or your lessons?
So I teach a lot of how to connect with, right now, I'm on this big kick to help people connect with influencers. And by that, I don't mean like celebrities who have a big Instagram following. But what I mean are people who have a audience of your ideal clients or customers. How do you build authentic relationships with them and create win-win partnerships with them so that you can get in front of their audience and so that you can really serve them and add value? That's been my latest project that I'm really excited about, because I find that when entrepreneurs are networking, one of the mistakes that they make is they will go to live events, which are awesome, virtual or in person. Live events are the best places to meet people that are like-minded, but they'll go to these live events and they will look for clients. And that is a really slow process. You might have to sift through like 1,000 people to find like 10 good clients that might be a good fit with you. But instead of finding 10 clients, wouldn't it be so much more powerful to find 10 partners who each have access to, even you say 100 of your ideal clients? I mean, that just exponentially increases your amount of effort, and you get to add a massive amount of value relatively quickly. So so that's what I do now, is I help people just make those partnerships, make those connections in a way that really saves them time, money, effort, energy, and is also fun.
Right.
That is so powerful. Have you heard the term Dream 100?
I have heard the term Dream 100.
I'm assuming you have. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly, I mean, it started with Chet Holmes and the Ultimate Sales Machine, and then Dana Derricks and Russell Brunson have really taken that to another level. And you see what those guys have done and how they've taught it. And it is such a powerful tool. And I think, you know, that's one thing I don't think people appreciate as much as they should, is what you're teaching, the power of networking. You know, when you're, you know, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're selling. If you're a salesman or you're a parent or you're a spouse, you sell. And the influence of your network is so powerful. And one thing that we've seen that's been really cool is I've got an inner circle mastermind, and Heidi's part of that. And watching the people that are part of that mastermind, they're from Canada, all over the US and all over the place. And very few of them had ever met before they became part of this mastermind. But now they're networking within this mastermind group, and to see how many of them are doing business together now. And it would have never happened because they wouldn't have had the opportunity to network together. And so, yeah, I love that. And I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on the power of networking and how people should do it and what it can do for them.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. So many people that I've met, Heidi included, right? I mean, had we not done that joint venture thing and I hadn't met Connie and you hadn't met Connie, then we would have never met each other. And as adults, it's a lot harder to make friends than it is when you're in school and you're forced to make friends with everyone who sits around you. As an adult, you have to like put effort in, and really, like, we don't have time for that. So, so it's really important to make a good network that can kind of help make introductions easier for all of us, right? And kind of make it natural. So one of the things that is really helpful is like how Heidi and I met, is getting into groups like Facebook groups or meetup groups or whatever, where the purpose is connection. I hesitate to say join networking groups or networking meetups, because I think a lot of those groups have that negative connotation that people think of when they hear networking, which is scammy, salesy, used car salesman kind of a feel, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with a used car salesman either, but they have a negative connotation, right? That they're going to somehow scam you.
Right.
And
or the people that come to the networking event and just walk around and like hand their cards out.
Yes.
You know, without being solicited, without having any conversation, or they just put them on a table or whatever. That's
They go, hi, you have a face. Take my card. Take my card. Or they say, so what do you do? And you can tell in their question that they are just waiting for you to stop talking so they can tell you what they do. They don't remember your name. They don't remember any details about you. They don't even care. They just really want to share their piece.
When you stop talking, you say, okay, what is it I do? And they can't repeat it.
You know, I've never tried asking that, but that might be a fun game that I'll add into the next time I do a networking event, is be like, so wait, do you remember what I said? But yeah, so we don't want that. That's why I hesitate to say join networking groups, just because it can feel a little weird, the environment. But what you can do is join groups of people who are into the same kinds of things as you that do encourage connection. So let's say, and it can be something totally unrelated to business. Let's say you're into running or something. Join a running group. Join those clubs where you have mutual interests, and naturally talking about business is going to come up. This is a little bit more of the slow route, right? It's less direct, but it's so much more authentic and so much more satisfying. Because if you're hanging out with people who run and you're a runner, you already have something in common. Like, you already have something you both love. So whether or not you do business together, you're going to have a great time. Like, you've made a new friend. And for me, I only want to do business with people I would consider friends. If there's somebody I wouldn't hang out with in my spare time, I don't want to do business with them either. Like, they can take their money to someone else, right? I want people in my network who are friends. I want people on my client list who are friends. And that's just my kind of outlook on networking in general, is like, you're kind of looking for friends with a purpose.
Right. And I think that, something I heard a while ago, it was Benjamin Hardy. I think he is great at this because when he's trying to network with someone, he does such a good job of trying to add value to them. He released a new book in June, and he wanted to get on Pat Flynn's podcast, and he did. And afterwards they were talking about doing some things. And I don't know if you know who Benjamin Hardy is, but he was the #1 writer on Medium for, I think, 3 years in a row.
Wow.
And
what?
medium.com.
Oh.
And so what he did is he wrote a really great article on Pat, on his products and what he did. And, Pat didn't even know about it until it was out there. And, when you're trying to network with people and you can give value and add value like that, it's just so powerful. And so, I think that's great.
I love that example, Jeff. That's one of the tips. I have this giveaway with tips in it, and they're great, but they're all over the place. So you get to pick whichever ones make sense to you. And one of the tips is doing something like that, where you do a review of someone you admire. And what's cool about that is that not only are you giving them props, right, but also you're being super genuine. You are sharing what they did for you. And you could do this in a really intimate way. Like, you can say, okay, let me give you an example. One of my mentors when it comes to marketing and publicity is Selena Sue. She is the creator of Impacting Millions. And she tells this story about some woman who reached out to her and was like talking to her as if they were friends. Like, reached out to her by email and was talking to her as if they were friends. Like, hey, can you mail for me, or whatever she was asking. And Selena was like, who is this person? Like, do I know her? And she's also a super connector. She knows a lot of people. So she's like, maybe we're friends. And I just I'm blanking on the name. So she searches up in her emails, and she finds that this person had sent her multiple emails before, but the emails were stuff like, love that blog post, great video, stuff like that. They were things that were lovely, but very generic. And so they didn't stand out. And so she didn't remember this person. And you can do one little tweak when you send an email to someone you admire, whose list you're on or whatever, that can make you stand out and make you memorable. And the tweak is this: give a compliment with a specific result. So instead of just saying, wow, that was a great blog post, which is, lovely, but also bland, you could say something like, man, I loved that blog post. I learned X from this post, and I went out and I did it. And then here are the results I got from it. Thank you so much. Something like that is like, wait a minute, what? You actually listened to what I said, and then you went and did something with it, and then you reported the results to me? No one does that. No one does that. It's so unheard of. And I've used that little technique to connect with all kinds of people. Another one of my mentors, when it comes to business and personal finance.
Just before you move on that, can you tell me what Selena's last name is again?
Sue, S-O-O.
Thank you.
Selena Sue, who I met through this other mentor, Ramit Sethi. That's how I met Selena. Ramit Sethi is the founder of I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which sounds super scammy, but it isn't. Sounds super scammy, but it's not scammy at all. He's the most down-to-earth, practical person in the world. But I met him at one of his conferences. And I remember I was standing with a friend, and I was like, oh, there's Ramit. And it was a million, a ton of people there. But I was like, oh, there's Ramit. I want to go talk to him and just thank him for what he's done for me. And my friend was just like, I want to talk to him too, but I can't because oh, he's famous, and she was totally fangirling and couldn't deal. And a lot of people do that. And a lot of people do that with people they admire. And I'm like, being a fan is great, but being a fan is not being a peer. And if you show up as a fan, you'll put yourself in that lower tier where people can't relate to you in the same way. So I was like, okay, you just watch me. Like, you stand here, watch me, and then you just do what I do. Just repeat me, just like I did with Mike. And so I went over to Ramit, and I was just like, thank you so much for your course called blah. This is what I did with it. Here are my results. And I'll tell you what it was. It was a course called Dream Job, and it was about how to find your dream job. So this was like years and years ago that I took this course. But one of my goals with that course was to triple my income, to get a new job in a totally new field, in a totally new place I've never worked before, and triple my income. And I was able to do it with his program in a couple of months. And so I told him that. I was like, thank you so much for Dream Job. Like, I wanted to triple my salary, and within 3 months, I was able to get a new job that tripled my salary in a totally new field. And he was like, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Can I record your testimonial on my cell phone right now? Because I want to use this like in my marketing material and like out in the world. And I'm like, of course. So how much more memorable am I from someone who's like, oh my gosh, Ramit, you're amazing. I love your book. Your courses are great. Like that sounds good, but it's like you're like a dime a dozen when you do something like that. So
that's
I love
awesome. That even, it just makes me reflect on people I've interacted with. I've got a course, just a free course I give on my website called the Momentum Series. And I had a lady that I knew had signed up for it. And, some people I hear feedback, some I don't. And she wrote me this wonderful, detailed thank you and talking about the things that she learned and how it applied to her. And, the funny thing is she's in Pakistan. And I just had someone else this morning send me a message about something. And I saw what line of work she was in. And I just replied and I said, are you from Pakistan? And she says, yes, I am. And I said, and it's just that connection. And, so both those two, I'm going to remember those two now and probably have more communication with them, where if the first one, Misha, hadn't, communicated with me like she had, if she just said thanks or nothing at all, I wouldn't know who she is. But I've actually had an opportunity to share some of her work now. And she just told me the other day, she's writing a blog post about my Momentum series now. And so it really is the way you can start networking, and it doesn't have to be someone across the street. I mean, I've never been to Pakistan.
Not yet.
Exactly.
Not during COVID-19, but someday
Right.
You could definitely go there. I love that. And it's like, it's exactly what you said, Jeff, just that little bit of personal touch. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be pages and pages, because honestly, no one has time to read it. So please, for the love of Pete, keep your communication short if you can. But like, it's so meaningful to have someone say, here's the specific result I got from you. And to like 10x that, you do it like the person you just mentioned who does it on Medium, you do it publicly. And again, it doesn't even have to be on Medium. That could be a Facebook post where you're just like, oh my gosh, this person's book came out. I learned XYZ from it. It's incredible. Check it out. Here's a link. Like, you're sending someone traffic or business or just accolades. That feels so good, because people don't usually do that. People don't usually just cheer other people on for no good reason.
Yeah. Testimonials go so far, and they can, because of a testimonial you're given on a person or product, can create a great relationship with that person. So that's awesome. I want to touch on something else just to make sure we do it before we run out of time. I want to hear your 3 biggest mistakes people make when they're networking.
Okay.
With influencers, or you can go on and explain more, but share with us.
Yes. Okay. So the 3 biggest mistakes. One I already mentioned, which was looking for clients instead of partners. So, consider changing that approach. Another one is focusing on the product instead of the person. And those are the card dispensers. Those are the people who are like, you're like, oh, so what do you do? And they're like, oh, I do healing and these 3 modalities. And then I learned from this master on a mountain back. And you're just like, okay, like that, that's too much. Like, I just met you. What does that have to do with me? Like, maybe get to know the person instead of your product, because people do business with people. And if they like you, they're going to try to do business with you. I can't tell you how many people have connected with me and they're like, I'm not even ready for what you do, but I just wanted to meet you. Like, I just want to be friends. They're like, I'm not even ready to work with you, but I just want to be your friend. So definitely connect with people instead of just focusing on the product. The third thing would be, the third mistake is when people have a me first mentality instead of a give first mentality. And that's kind of what we were talking about with giving those testimonials. A me first mentality is like, hey, so-and-so, can you do this for me? Can you mail out this for me? Can you check out my website? Can you look at, making a request way too soon in a relationship, or being so anxious to make a request, just doesn't really feel good to the other person. But giving first and giving value is so incredible. And it could be something free like a testimonial, or it could be something also free and powerful like a spot on your podcast. If you have a podcast, that's like a really easy way to add value to people, because it's so meaningful for people to be able to share their message. And it doesn't cost you that much to do it. It costs you a little bit of time and effort, but it's like such a huge value add to other people. So thank you, the two of you, for that.
And it's a lot of fun, and like you said, it's very authentic, because you get to just be yourself and tell your story, and it's just an amazing story. But back to your second thing that people do wrong, just really quickly. So if somebody does come up to you and say, "What do you do?" Do you just say, "Oh, okay, like I'm in merchant services"? Like, how do you turn it back on the other person, and make it about them if they've asked you what you do?
Well, that's a good question. One thing I like to do is, I call it treasure hunting. I'm always asking questions of other people to find out what their hot buttons are, like what they're excited about, what they want to talk a lot about, what just lights them up, and try to find a point of connection, so then we could both geek out about something, because that's like the most fun way to do conversation. Mm-hmm. So usually when I'll like gauge their intentions, right? If it seems like they want to actually have a real conversation, then I'll take them in that direction. But if it seems like they just want to give me their business card, then I'll say my introduction as shortly as possible, so they can give me their card and then go on to the next poor unsuspecting victim. If it's someone who really wants to have a conversation, I'll say my piece, and then I'll just be like, what about you? What do you do? And I'll just just that simple phrase. If they're the kind of person who it's a little hard for them to like latch on to things, they're not sure how to get that conversation going, you can encourage them to ask you more questions to help find something that you have in common by having a interesting one-liner. Like the way you talk about yourself, you can do it in a way that leaves a little question mark in their mind. For example, a lot of times I'll introduce myself, not in business context, but just like when I'm talking to people out in the street or whatever, I'll say I'm a scientist and an educator, which is true. But the way that I say it is, I don't say what kind of scientist or what kind of educator. I just say I'm a scientist and an educator and leave it at that. And then people are like, wait, but what grade, or like what kind of science? Or like they'll ask more and more questions. And then as I talk, hopefully in me talking, at some point they'll light up and be like, oh, I know something about this. And then we can kind of go in that direction. And I love talking about science and education because that's been my life for so long that, I could talk about that forever. And most people have some relation to one of those topics. So that's something you can do in your introductions, make it super short and memorable, and leave a question mark at the end of it.
Okay. Good advice.
That was something great, actually, even in your bio. I'm looking at your bio and I'm looking, oh, she's a PhD candidate. She's at an Ivy League school. All of a sudden she's homeless. And I'm thinking, okay, PhD candidate, what was she doing? What Ivy League school? What school was she in? That's why I asked you, because ever since I read that, I was like, what school was she in? And then, so yeah, it's great. It really causes the curiosity of, I want to know more. Tell me.
And you know what's so funny about that, Jeff? So for my undergrad, I went to UCLA. For my grad, I went to NYU, which are fancy schools. And I almost never, as much as I love being a Bruin, I almost never mention the names of my schools because of my story, because it doesn't matter, right? Because before I would use those as like a shield or something, like, I went to UCLA, I went to an Ivy League, like, I'm so fancy, look at but like, I was sitting in a homeless shelter next to people who didn't graduate high school. So those titles were not that fancy anymore. So from then till now, I like almost never, like the only time I mention what schools like by name is when people do what you did, Jeff, when people actually ask me what's the name. I won't even say it. And people would treat me differently too when I would say stuff like that. And in a good way, like with respect, but also it like misses the point.
Right. So when Heidi and I first met, our first actually meeting in person was she invited me to a chamber meeting. And so I went to a chamber meeting, and I don't know how many people were there, Heidi, 100 people?
Oh, at least, yeah.
So what do you advise your clients? Heidi, it was actually the first time I met Heidi face to face, but she was the only person I met there. How do you go about the networking process? Like what are the steps you take?
And it's one of those ones where you have a chance to stand up and do like your 30-second commercial or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I see so many, like, you know, when the opportunity comes that it's informal and you can start visiting and stuff, and it's so easy for people to go hide in a corner or just sit there and drink their water because they
or
don't
go
know
straight
anyone,
to
so
somebody
they're
that they already know and hang out with the people they already know. And yeah.
Exactly. So what's your advice on how you go about that and getting out of your comfort zone and making those events worthwhile?
So it kind of depends on your personality. Some people are more social butterflies, but they just don't know like what to say or how to approach people. Other people are more wallflowers. They really get super high anxiety when it comes to approaching people, or they just don't like that feeling of being kind of exposed. So what I would say is if you are a social butterfly, or if you would like to be a social butterfly, what you can do is walk around, like see the little pockets of people in the room and make it a little game. I actually learned this from Matthew Kimberly, who teaches sales and like email marketing and stuff. He has this fun game, which I think is so silly but awesome, where he just plays paparazzi. So he goes around and he says, hey, I'm doing this contest with my friends. I'm trying to see how many pictures I can get with people here. So can we just take a quick picture for Instagram and I'll tag you? And then they're like, okay, that's weird, but okay. So everybody takes a picture, and then he sits there and he gets like their handles and he tags them right then and there on Instagram. And he's like, all right, thanks so much. What do you do? What do you do? Okay, great. Like, I would love to connect with you again. And he kind of does this little game to see how many people he can do this with. And by doing that, he gets pictures with everybody. Everyone gets tagged because people forget to take pictures at those things. So now everyone has great pictures. They all get tagged on social media. And also he can write down in his notes, like, follow back up with this person, follow back up with this person, follow back up with this person for the people who resonate with what he does. And then he's meeting a lot of people, but in a very shallow way. So he can go deeper later, because sometimes at the event is not the time to have that conversation because people are just like in the getting to know you phase. If you're a super extroverted or want to be, definitely try that route. Now, most people are going to feel ridiculously uncomfortable with doing that, which is fine.
It's also a great way to remember their names.
Because you're getting there.
If you forgot their name, you can just go to your Instagram and that was his name.
It's their name and their face. You're like, I remember that person.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like it's brilliant and it's fun, and you could really do it as a game, like especially if you bring another friend with you. You could do it that way. But like I said, most people will hate that approach. So the other thing you can do is look for groups of people who are talking. Look for groups of like 2 or 3, or maybe 3 or more if you can. If you're one who's a little more introverted, walk up to the group, stand there so they see that you exist, and then just simply wait for a break in the conversation and say, mind if I join you? Like, it's a very simple phrase. You don't need any kind of crazy lines or like anything like that. You just say, mind if I join you? And everyone will say yes. Like, I've done this a million times. Everyone says yes, even when they should have said no. People say yes, even when they're having like a heated debate, and I walk up like, la 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 la, hey, can I join you? And they're like, and then another, oh yes, sure, please come on in. And then another thing about that, and they like keep arguing, and I'm like, oh, I totally didn't read that situation right, and they definitely should not have let me join them. But everyone says yes to that request. And what's great about joining a group of like three people or more, if you can, is that they're probably already talking, and they can just carry the conversation. So you're just in proximity, and you can just add in your 2 cents when it seems appropriate. But this is a way for you to be around people without feeling the pressure of like holding a conversation or what should I say next or all of that stuff. All you have to do is just add to what they're already talking about. Just don't distract from it. Just keep it going. And that's a great way to kind of warm yourself up. So I hope those 2 options give you like a range of thoughts for how to approach that situation.
And you know what I like too is your story of when your friend got you to join at college in that booth or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And, the thought that came to mind is, success leaves clues. And you watched someone else, what they were doing, and thought, well, I'll just try what they're doing, and it works. And so I think that comes into play in a lot of these things that, as you're watching people, and, obviously we can say, well, we know what Shereese does. She goes around and joins in fights or whatever and says, can I join you? But
I totally do.
it works. And so, it's, if you're uncomfortable doing that, just do what's already working for someone else. You don't have to reinvent something. You don't have to make
Mm-hmm.
something really awkward. So
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. So we are getting to the end here. I don't want to get there without letting you share some information. I want people to know where they can find you, how they can follow you, and also what you were talking about earlier with your 10 tips. So if you want to share all that information, I will have it in all the show notes, so anyone listening can go to the show notes and find it. But I want you to talk about it so everyone knows what's there and what's available, and make sure they connect with you.
Okay, absolutely. So you can find me at jvjoy.com because I'm all about joint ventures with joy. And the free gift that I have for you guys who are watching this or listening to this right now is called 10 Tips for Connecting with Influencers. So it's 10 tips plus some bonus tips about how you can connect in a way that's totally authentic and not a fangirl or a fanboy, and that will be well received. You can find those tips at jvjoy.com/10 tips, and that's the number 10.
Awesome. This is, I think this is such a vital skill that people need to pay more attention to. So I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today because it's great information. And, you know, whether you're in business or not, the networking is so vital and so important. And there's so many people that are so introverted and don't want to do it. And when you start doing it, the opportunities that open up. I mean, you look at, I met Heidi. Heidi met Connie. Now we met you. You know, I knew, I through someone that I knew through coaching, knew Jesse T. We got Jesse on our show. Now Jesse and I, we're in a separate group together, and we're always going back and forth. He's like, hey, I saw so-and-so on your show. Can you make that introduction? And, you know, the network can just keep growing, and it's so powerful. So no, thank you so much. I think this is incredible information you've shared, and I hope our listeners will reach out to you and get some more information, and definitely get those 10 tips. They'll be very helpful.
You are so welcome, Jeff. And something you just said, just this last little thing I want to say, kind of echoing Russell Brunson's thoughts with his one funnel away motto, is I like to say you're one relationship away from changing your business and changing your life, because that's really the truth. And I think a lot of us have a social circle by default. It's the friends we made at school, the people we hang out with at work, etc. But what networking can be for you is a social circle by design. You create the kind of person you want to be based on the kind of people you want to be around, and then go find those people. Yeah, it's just like a more fun way to do it.
Yep.
That is
great
really
advice.
Awesome. I even like that more than one funnel away.
Yeah.
That is
Me
good.
too.
That's good.
I like that too.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much. We loved having you on here, and really appreciate the opportunity to network and get to know you. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Shereese.
Thanks, guys.
Right. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for being with us. I hope you enjoyed that episode and you got a lot of value out of it. Please subscribe and make sure you don't miss any future episodes. And please come visit our websites, jeffheggie.com and ECIBFS.com. Thanks again for being with us, and hope to see you next time.